Okay. Is there a motion to open the public meeting of the Holyoke Planning Board?
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Roll call vote for Nunez.
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Lozano,
Yes, ma'am.
Lauren,
Yes.
and Brenda.
Yes.
So, we're obviously not doing or notices of decision for anything tonight, so we can skip by that chunk of the agenda and going to planning board business. We have other things, but this afternoon we received a letter from Aaron asking if we could delegate somebody to be on a wayfinding committee. And Aaron, can you tell us about that?
Sure. So we secured a Mass Gaming Mitigation Fund grant to do a wayfinding study and plan. In fact, we went out to RFP. Stantec was the winning bid, and they have started initial meetings with Jennifer Heat from the economic development side, Jeff Burkott, obviously from the planning side, and myself. We have a internal meeting set up with them, I think, bi-weekly. They need a working committee. The working committee will have members from DPW, Holyoke Gas and Electric, local cultural council, the chamber, a couple other. I have to look back at the email, but it'll be a 8 to 12 member sort of working group. They would meet at the most monthly. This group is trying to move the project pretty quick, but I think we might take a little breath. There will be 2 roundtable events during the time, so open to the public. We suggested that one be virtual and one be in person. So wayfinding, as you probably know, is how people enter the city, how they get around, the directions mostly on signage, and also tying in now to apps as well, so that whether, I know Kate did some work with the parking study group, but eventually if there was a parking app and those kind of things, there can be integration. There were also, one of the first things that we asked in the RFP, and we've already discussed with them, is looking at some of our major throughways, Beach Street, Main Street, High and Maple, etc., to do an evaluation of signs, if you will, because as probably most of you know who drive through the city, sometimes these areas are just sort of barrage of signs and no one really pays attention. We've also heard anecdotally that some of our signage is not properly posted, be it to height or different things. So is there opportunity for multiple signs to be on one post, on one pole, right? I mean, these are things that we don't necessarily know. So their first step was to do a sign evaluation and then come back to us with what could be done with that. And then, of course, the wayfinding through the city. I will say that we will have to ensure that there are at least two signs, I'm assuming by 391 and up by the Veterans Home to 91, that indicate how to get to MGM, because this is money from MGM that's doing this. So, and the last piece I'll say is that, we secured a significant grant for this, and we kept money out of the RFP for this so that we actually have some design money. I think that most of us get to the point where we do these plans and sometimes there's some great ideas that we have no implementation money for it. So actually we will have funding to, if there's a new design for street signs or welcome to Holyoke signs or whatever it may be, that we'll actually be able to start that. And then of course we can go to the next round of the Mass Gaming Mitigation Fund to try to expand it. But I think that was one of the things we really wanted to be mindful of was, let's not get a plan again that sits on a shelf. Let's have some implementation money after. So, whether it's highlighting our parks, highlighting wayfinding, this is also good timing, I will say, because there are other initiatives going on, particularly, the MassDOT High and Maple Street Improvement Project, but also culturally with the potential designation of the Puerto Rican Cultural and Heritage District on Main Street. That will be a designation to the Mass Cultural Council. That I believe the vote actually in the meeting is next month about this. This has been a long time coming. So those are the kind of things that we can put on signs like on 91. Some of you may have noticed on 91, there's 3 new blue attraction signs in Holyoke with nothing on them. But my personal preference would not be to put McDonald's and Taco Bell on them, but to be putting, different things. But we're not supposed to, which is interesting when you see McDonald's, usually it's supposed to be food, but you're not supposed to be saying specific things. Like you're not supposed to be able to say Brennan's, this way, but you could say the cultural district, you could say the historic district, you could say the canal district, you could say downtown, right? So this is a lot about marketing as well in their proposal. So that's also why we're making sure that someone from Holyoke Gas and Electric is there, because there's a lot of marketing that they do for the city. So I think it'll actually be a pretty interesting project. And again, the delivery date would be next summer. So this is not a long-term lift. Again, if there was a board member, obviously, we know everyone's schedule's busy. You might not make every meeting if it's once a month. But again, if there's someone who's interested in that and would like to be part of that, would be, I think, again, I wasn't at the meeting today because the department head meeting. I know Jeff and Jennifer met with. I think Jeff, you were there too, but I know Jennifer met with them. So
Yep.
I don't know if there's more to add about why they particularly wanted a planning board member, but I think it does make sense.
Just a question, Aaron. What day they meet? Once a month or every other week?
The work would be once a month. Internally, we meet with them more often. So just Jeff, Jennifer, and myself meet with them more often. So it would just be once a month, and it would be virtual. It would most likely be a virtual meeting. And as I mentioned, the two stakeholder or roundtable meetings that they're calling them, one would be in person, one would be virtual.
Do you know what day they meet?
Nope, none of that's set yet. So we're building the committee first, and then we would figure out what date works for people. Those would probably be during regular business hours, so it would not be after 5. These would be working meetings. These wouldn't be. So this would be during the work day, which may be a factor for people. So that's something to consider. I don't imagine these being after 5 o'clock meetings. These during the traditional work day.
If board is okay with it, because since Alex Moore was mayor, and I used to give him this idea from Norwich, Connecticut. They have those signs, a lot of cultures signs, a lot of different language, saying like "Welcome to Holyoke," and you say in Spanish, in English, in even my language. Like they have like 8-10 language, right? So we have a lot of different language spoken in Holyoke, so we can have that. If board is okay with that, I love to join this one. Because I have some ideas already from Norwich, because I was like asking Mayor Alex, but I never asked our present mayor.
Oh, wait.
But that'd be a good idea if a board is okay with that.
Yeah, no,
Sounds great.
It does sound great. If you're volunteering for this, is there a motion to appoint you as our delegate?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call vote for Mimi,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Rosanna,
Yes, ma'am.
Lauren,
Yes.
and Brenda.
Do I have to say yes to?
Oh,
You don't have to, but
Yes.
But you should.
okay, you should, yes. All right, it is unanimous. And, Aaron, I jumped out of order to take this up because I was afraid you had other commitments that you needed to get to. If you're going to stick around and that isn't a problem, we can go back to regular order. But
Is there anything else you need me for particularly on the agenda?
I don't think so, unless there's something that you particularly wanted to be here for.
No, I think we're good. Hopefully we'll see some folks on Saturday at the second listening session at Harris State Park.
Well, you're going to see those of us who are staffing anyway.
Aaron,
Thank you, Aaron.
Aaron, while you're still there, I know that you
Yeah.
had just texted the mayor concerning that November 7th all boards meeting. Did he ever follow up with you?
I just saw an email come through, so
Oh, yeah.
Not
Email
that-
or text?
I think it's to the organizers. I think it seems to be,
Yeah,
Okay.
it would be good to know what's going on with that.
yeah, it's in person. I can tell you it is in person. It looks like, he's putting together an agenda right now. It looks like just preliminarily, it would be the mayor welcoming everybody. I think when he talked today about at the department head meeting, it was more about expectations and that. So it looks like the mayor will be speaking on expectations for mayoral appointees, budget and finance procedures and expectations. It looks like the personnel department will be speaking on some of the policies. Legal department, when in need of a legal opinion, how to utilize the legal department. Looks like the city clerk is going to be there to talk about public records requests, open meeting law, and then procurement and purchasing. So also looks like I'm supposed to be there to talk about the comprehensive master plan. I think the second half seems more informational. OCD talking about CDBG, ARPA, opioid funding, and then conservation and sustainability talking about probably the hazard mitigation plan. So I think the first half seems to be just some updates from mayor, personnel, legal, and city clerk, and then a little bit of just sort of seems to be informational of initiatives.
Okay, before I ask my question, Lauren, your hand is up.
So it's not about this meeting, but it was just for Aaron in general. You were doing a thing for a while where you were coming and kind of telling us like big picture stuff that was happening in the city. And I was wondering if while we had you here, we could get you on our schedule to come back to a meeting and do that again soon.
Yep. Yeah, we can. I mean, I'm happy to do it, and I think happy to look at the schedule now. I think it makes most sense when you have the next couple of meetings. I think maybe trying to grab one of that. I think you only have one in December, so maybe it's that one. But I think I can work with Jeff to look at which agenda makes the most sense to take 10-15 minutes to kind of do an update. Because I know some of these meetings are, if you've got the real site plan reviews and some real reviews, I don't want to take up more of your time. So I'll coordinate with Jeff and Mimi to see which agenda makes the most sense.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, sounds great. And I just wanted to clarify, you said in person. Is it going to be in person only? Because that's still a lot of people in one space.
I mean, I know as much as I've told you. I think I'm assuming it's going to be at the high school, but that's only my assumption. The cafeteria would probably. It is a lot of people. There's some talk about City Hall ballroom, which would not be a good choice if they want to do hybrid because the technology and the sound up there is horrible, as we know from the community planning, the committee meeting we had up there recently. So, yeah, I mean. The mayor informed me of he wanted to do this, and I think I don't even know if I mentioned to any staff. Maybe I mentioned to Jeff or some people, and then I think literally like 2 days later, the email came in that he was doing it. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I understand that it is hard to do hybrid. It's just,
yeah.
Well, we'll get into it later.
Okay.
So, okay, we'll look forward to getting the update from you. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you for all you do. I know you guys got a lot of work going on, and as you know, we are trying to bring some more support to this to the side of the office. So long process, but we're trying.
Yes,
Okay.
half a mile onward into the valley,
Exactly.
etc.
Oil dance, 1 step forward, 2 steps back sometimes. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
See ya.
Night. And going back to our regular listed order, we do have executive session on the agenda just in case we need it. I know of no reason why we need it for tonight, but since Jane is here, Jane, is there any reason that we should go into executive session?
I have no updates on anything at this point.
Okay, then we will skip it and power along. So this brings us to project updates, old business and new business. And the big thing listed on the agenda for tonight, as far as I'm concerned, is the comprehensive plan update. And I think we are getting to a point where we obviously have not gotten all of the feedback from the public that we hope to get. The consultants are working like mad to try to get or to gather more information. there's our second big listening session on Saturday, which will be at the merry-go-round, and which will feature things like pastry and free rides on the merry-go-round. Obviously, anybody who isn't scheduled to work already, which is Kate and me, who feel like coming by, please come by. We will have pastry and merry-go-round rides. But in the meantime, one of the big things that obviously is going to be done or should be done as part of the comprehensive plan process is a whole lot of zoning work. And we talked to Aaron briefly and to the support team at agency about starting to get that work done now and figuring out what we want to focus on and how we want to handle that work, which I think is going to land mostly on the planning board because it just is. And, there are things that I think we all know that we want to try to address because they've been bothering us for years off and on. And I thought maybe we could take some time tonight to see if we can narrow down what areas of the zoning ordinance we really want to propose to fix as part of this project or process. We know we're going to need to address ADUs. It's state law, but we still have, the city still has some discretion about how they're regulated. And probably we should get out ahead of it instead of just leaving it to percolate through and be done case by case. We know that we have problems with the sign ordinance. We know that we have problems with BH as a zoning district and where it's located in the city. I'm sure there are more. So I was just going to throw this out to everybody to talk about, where do we want to focus our energies and how do we want to set up to get this work started? So anybody, questions, comments, ideas about what we need to be working on?
I mean, we could probably list a bunch of other things that we know need to get worked on.
Yeah, I would like to have a list if we possibly can come up with one.
Jeff has a list to start us off.
So, yeah, thank you. And I know that, you touched upon a few of them, but excuse me, as you touched upon parking, signage, I'd like to, I guess, resurrect the RC zone,
Yeah.
for the whole, southern or, corridor, commercial corridor down by the mall. The PUD, which is something that's honestly never been used, has been touched upon by some developers, but then it is so riddled with inconsistency that, whenever they touch upon it, I say, well, we'd really like to work with you on this, but we're gonna have to take this kind of step by step because it's just so poorly drafted. The ADU, another thing too was, I started this with Tessa when she was just a city councilor. The idea of special permits and should they be with the
Yeah.
planning board or city council? The fact that the planning board has roughly, say, 16, but the council has 80, and some of those may not be maybe more appropriate for the planning board than the council. And then to your other point, ADUs and the BH zoning, those were like my hit list if there ever was some. I'm sure, but the list obviously can go on and on and on, but these were the more say significant ones that might be better addressed in the public forum, especially the form of a comp plan versus taking cold just to the city council, because we know how those have ended up in the past. So that was mine. EV charging also might be another one, the future of EV charging.
Oh, yeah, and that reminds me, before I ask Lauren about tiny houses, but before I forget, what do you call them? Server farms.
Hmm.
No,
The
there have
data
been
center,
Data center,
or
basically,
yeah.
Kate, go ahead.
I would love us to think about whether we can have design standards. I think that that's something that could really be helpful.
Yes.
I don't really know how would work, but I think it sounds like a great idea. And I think related to that, but separate, related, I'm not sure, how to enforce or push harder towards having new development be energy resilient.
Yeah, I think there's a
And
stretch code we could,
environmental, yeah, the new stretch codes, and
Yeah.
also lighting, so that we're working towards lighting standards that are, again, ecological, environmental, pro
Yeah.
people, pro animal, like not just blazing lighting. I know a number of local,
yeah,
Northampton was working on one that was going to be
yeah, I think Westfield
Bye-bye.
was too. I mean,
right.
didn't they sponsor that field trip?
Kate, what do you mean by design standards?
So I only know the barest amount of it, but
Yeah.
you could have design standards that say, some towns have standards that say, we want buildings to look like this, and not like designing the whole thing,
Yeah.
but within, have certain kinds of parameters for
Yeah,
what they
like-
might look like.
Okay, like when we were talking about the Dunkin' that has the signage on every single side, plus the roof, plus the basement, plus everything. And we're like, there are towns that just have like,
Everything has
Some-
to look like a house.
yeah,
Yeah.
or it just like has something like the handles are the D&D and that's enough or something like that. Okay.
Or like
good.
even if you go downtown High Street, like you see certain stores have certain signage and it's
Yeah.
not like uniform. So
Yeah.
making it like I agree with that because I feel like it gives it a more classy welcoming to visitors to come. Like Jizzy Jazz has that big old sign at the end of High Street that looks ridiculous, but it wasn't supposed to be there, but he ended up getting away with it. Like, like instead of having like uniform, like they don't have to all look alike, but like Cake said, like a certain statue, certain letters, certain colors, like just to make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to visitors
less
that come.
chaotic.
Instead of looking like, what the hell is this? Are we in Mardi Gras? Like, what's going on?
Right.
I
And
totally
your
agree with
design
that.
standards could be very loose or very tight. I don't think we're going to probably end up with very tight design standards, but at least some design standard might be useful.
And I would
And
extend
just
that
bearing
to
in mind that-
landscape too.
Whoop, sorry. Also bearing in mind that design standards, I know that back in 2013, Gordon Alexander, then counselor, filed design standards, but then later it just pretty much, the council never took it up, it went stale. But those design standards can also, include lighting standards, because like right now, when we look at lighting, a project, I always say a typical street light is 1 to 3 foot candles, and then we try to think of something else that makes sense. But this could actually establish what those candles are in whatever neighborhood, for instance. Or also it can be sound. Right now, we've got these frequency things, but it's not, a vacuum is 80 decibels. So that's how I always, ambient noise at night is 40 decibels. So it's like, I'm always trying to think of those terms because there's nothing defined right now for us to actually look at. So I look at these generic things when it comes to, say, lighting. All that could be established in these design standards.
Yeah, and the other thing Gordon was
Landscaping
pushing
codes,
for
sorry.
was actually landscape standards. And no, I think getting this nailed down is a great idea.
Right, because even landscaping, it's like, I like to think that, I don't want them to, promise us the Taj Mahal and later give us the double wide trailer. I'd rather have really good stock than have them, say that they're gonna do this elaborate thing that later they're never gonna take care of and it's gonna die. It's kind of like the Amazon warehouse or the Amazon overflow parking lot, which myself and Dav and I just reached out to them today. Because they had promised like 240 bushes around the perimeter fence. They died the first year, they took them out last year and they never replaced them. So I'm asking that they come back before us to try to figure out what are you gonna do there? Because there's all of that's gone. So it's that kind of thing that establishes up front what, the parameters of what is that good design.
Jeff, got a question for you. So, like the example you just give us the Amazon parking lot.
Yep.
I was watching that too. But we asked them to do this, blah, 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 and they promised us doing it, and they put some of them. But after that, they never take care of it, it's gone. There's any committee or city really check on them,
Well, so, okay, so thank you for that question. And so the response is that now that the building department has, Davin Pazik, who's the zoning officer, we were just talking about this today, that we're going to compile a list. Well, I've got the list. I just need to review it with him. I've got every single site plan review that's ever been done. I've got all their notices of decision, all the, and that he is going to, in fact, start looking at this stuff. Because once a site plan review, for instance, is approved, it's good for life. A special permit's good for life, or as long as someone's there to remember that it exists. So that might be one of the issues, is that, because of lack of staff or lack of time, funding, whatever, is that it kind of has been disregarded. But, as you recall, there have been certain projects, let's say, for instance, the Barnes and Noble Rivian project, after all those, since that was done in 95, 96, they came back and amended their site plan to add those EV charging stations. So someone remembered and they reached out to us and we said, yes, that's an amendment. But, it's just kind of catching up on that kind of stuff and having the staff to do it. And, at this point, it's Davin Pazik, the zoning officer. So we are going to be reviewing that in the coming weeks to kind of look and see, what do we want to tackle? How deep do we want to get into it? And, start looking at and perhaps calling some of these more recent developments back to either amend or recognize that there are decisions there that are supposed to be, maintained and followed.
Lauren,
Just to your point, Jeff, about the Barnes and Noble Rivian, when we were just talking about the Rivian the other day, they actually ended up installing more chargers than what they asked for. So, like, following up on that kind of stuff
Right.
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we use that as an example today, because I was at Davin's counter and, and I also brought up, that the Marcotte Ford, that went through site plan. They, as you know, installed 2. Now there's as many as 8 or more that are there. So it's going to be trying, and we've now alerted the electrical inspector to know that he's not supposed to be issuing permits, especially on newer projects, until he's addressed them with Davin as the front line, and then Davin follows up with me, because Davin's only been here a year or so. So it's just, once we get that list established, we discuss it, they'll better know what enforcement or what oversight they have for future expansions of that use on site. If that makes sense.
yeah, if we can figure out any enforcement mechanisms that will work better than just hoping to God we have a zoning officer. I have no ideas, but I would like to. And if we can think of any way we can strengthen enforcement as part of this process.
Right.
Is that anything? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is that anything that is being discussed in the comprehensive plan? Because I feel like that's a citywide issue in terms of enforcement of things. There's not enforcers for rules.
Yeah, no, I don't think that it is part of the comprehensive plan because, it doesn't go to where we want to go as a city. It's not a roadmap so much as you know that you need to enforce things or they're dead letters, but that would be true no matter what direction we decided to go in as a community.
But it does help us get to the direction that we're trying to go to.
It does. And, I would be very happy to see somebody bring that up and say, should this be part of our plan? Figuring out how we can actually enforce things.
Yeah. It just seems like we're running up against a lot of it in the city right now.
Yeah.
Well, we have a listening party.
You are absolutely correct, Lauren. Yeah, I was like, we got to add it to the list. It's been going on for a while. It's kind of disrespectful, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't even know whether every so often I think we need to hire bounty hunters. Probably illegal, but
I mean,
New York actually had a program that really affected illegal parking. And it was like you caught somebody parking or just idling on the street for long enough, you sent in their information and proof to the relevant agency, you got something like 50% of whatever fine was ultimately connected to it. And there were citizens who were making quite a decent second income on this truck has been idling on this corner for 45 minutes.
Hmm.
So I
Whether
think
that would
one
be
of the
legal in the
problems
state
is-
of Massachusetts, I do not know, but
And I think one of the problems in particular, when it comes to zoning anyways, and
Yeah.
the ordinances, is that if you had a zoning officer that could start at one end of High Street, from 391 and go up to Lyman Street, that would probably take him 2 weeks and several pens to write out all the fines. Between illegal fences, signage, parking, number of cars, just even the basic ordinance under 613, which states that no motor vehicle shall be parked within 5 feet of a street line or an abutting property. I mean, just drive down High Street, there's probably 500 instances of that. So I think part of that then becomes, well, it's almost like, some would argue it becomes like a police state. So it just depends on how that perception and how to manage the perception with still getting the would still satisfying the ordinances. I think that might be another juggling act.
yeah, no, that is ultimately a political call, how much enforcement you want. But, and so is where you think it's important to focus what enforcement you have. But this business of, all right, we can fix, and I hope we will fix, the problems with the zoning ordinance that make it impossible for us to demand certain things. Just because we put it in a site plan and it's officially what they're supposed to be doing, we know it does not mean that they're really going to do it. And I would like to have some mechanism for insisting that, no, you don't do this right. If it's important enough, you have to go back and fix it. We'll shut you down if you don't.
So how do we go about this? Like,
That's
what's the
next question.
process?
Yeah, I mean, once we have our list together, and we're going to have to talk about both the process and obviously about what we think should be done by way of fixing whatever we're fixing. What is the policy we want to write up? I don't know how this intersects with the open meetings law. I know at some point, because we are going to be suggesting changes to zoning, presumably we're going to have to start the 40A process where there's an order and we have hearings. Whether we need to do that if we're just preparing a set of policies to accompany or become part of the comprehensive plan, and I don't know. I think we can possibly set up committees that don't have to go through the whole open meetings procedure. But I don't know that for sure. I don't know that we can have committees that are bigger than 2 people at a time. I don't know how much time we realistically have individually and collectively to do this. So I was hoping for people's ideas about all of that too, including any information Jane might want to give us about the legalities of going about code redrafting as part of comprehensive plan and not necessarily part of a 40A order to change the zoning ordinance.
I mean, I think you can put in the comprehensive plan ideas for where you think the zoning ordinance could be improved. Absolutely. I don't see why you can't put in there like needs that the committee would see as to certain types of regulation that we don't have, or regulation that needs to be better. Recommendations, certainly. Actual redrafting, probably not, but certainly recommendations and advice and where the committee could see better.
But last time we did actually, there was a whole series of zoning changes that came out of it.
Well, that's
And-
coming out of it, sure, but that should only be under the 40A process, not under like a
Oh,
committee.
sure, right, right. There was
Right.
Okay.
recommendations made by the final committee to then there was a series of like 6 months after where all the zoning recommendations went through the council.
Right, so that's
Right.
fine. Recommendations are completely fine. And if then from that stems the actual proposed orders from that go into city council and that come back, you know, through planning, through that joint hearing process or double hearing process, then great.
Okay, but we are not in a position right now to, you know, once we've identified what we think the policy should be, say, launch the 40A processes to get the drafting started. And this is in some ways a political consideration in that if we deliver a package of recommendations saying, here are 7 areas where we think the following should be done, would we
Well, I think
want
it's-
them to
Sorry.
be able to accompany them almost immediately with, and if you agree, here's some things that you could vote through right now?
I mean, I don't think that's bad, you know, because the you can say like, this is a proposal that we think would work, but obviously it still needs to go through all the necessary processes. I think that's fine.
Oh yeah, I mean, you couldn't enact something without
Right.
having the full process.
Right, so I think that's fine.
Okay, so as long as we're just considering it a recommendation, we can at least think about language.
Right.
Okay,
So do we have to talk about that? Like anything that we're doing in a planning board meeting? Like, do we need to block off time in our meetings to dig into this? Or is this a subcommittee thing? And if so, can that only be 2 people? I don't know who that question's to. It's whoever wants to answer it.
I mean, I think it's really up to you guys. If you want to do it in full planning, then that's perfectly fine. If you want to set up a subcommittee, that's also fine.
yeah, no, I was thinking potentially multiple subcommittees, but what I'm concerned about avoiding is a situation like the cannabis thing that we just disposed of temporarily, where there's a concept so broad that it isn't even meaningful. And then it sticks around and gets picked to death, and by the time anybody's ready to act on it, the entire council has changed.
Well, maybe you can start off at plan in the full meeting and come up with ideas of where you think things could be improved. And then once you guys have a set of, you know, however many parts of the ordinance or new things that you should be inserted, once you have that, then you can separate the subcommittees to do the actual hard work and the drafting work, and then come back to planning to go over the final recommendation. You could do that.
Okay, well, that sounds good. If we can split the work up sufficiently, make our list, see who's interested in working on what. See if we can come up with broad concepts about where we want to go.
Having been part of trying to rewrite ordinances and seeing how much work it takes, I feel like I know the city has no money, but I feel like this is like paying somebody to write ordinance. I don't think this is gonna get done either quickly or well by volunteers. Is my opinion.
Well, you have a distinct point. It's just, what's the alternative?
Right. It may be the only option we have, but I'm just gonna say, I think this is, if volunteers are doing this, this is gonna take a long time if we want it done well.
See, that's why previously we had hired Mark Grabowski, who's considered the godfather of Massachusetts zoning, to review the zoning ordinance, and then he helped us come up with recommendations. And then later the drafts that were then, you know, brought forward to the city council for final approval in, you know, February of 2002. So, like I said, but Mark Grabowski was our attorney, and then we had Jeannie Armstrong, who was also helping shepherd the process through as well. And she was more or less, she was involved with the master plan, but she was really more about land use and well, zoning, and she coordinated with Mark.
So was
just-
that a part of the comprehensive plan the last time you did it? Like that was,
It was, they were, even though Jeannie was available, or pretty much, if I recall, throughout the whole process, she was primarily really focusing on that second half, which was the land use zoning rewrite stuff.
right, but was
Yeah.
did that come under the budget of the comprehensive plan?
I think it did. I think it did.
So is that a question we need to ask agency and say, what's your plan for this?
It's
As part of the
definitely not
comprehensive
in
plan.
their budget.
Right. I do
so is-
believe that there was additional money that was just gathered that I believe was, again, I don't have the, I believe Jennifer wrote the grant. I believe there was additional money that was provided for some sort of zoning review, but I don't have the finite details on that.
One possibility as this discussion develops is maybe what we want to do, rather than attempt to draft or new ordinances ourselves, is just focus very precisely on what we would like the new ordinances to do. And then when we have a collection of here are the recommendations, you know, we want the SC district to do X, Y, and Z. We want to cover these parcels, ideally. These are the general zoning rules that we want to apply throughout the district. If we can make it precise enough, we can possibly see if there is stretch funding anywhere to hire somebody to then translate that into actual ordinances. It will be less of a lift if they don't have to try to figure out what it is we want.
But to be like honest, how are we as volunteers gonna know how to get that specific? Maybe that is something that you and Kate, because you guys have been here long enough, are able to do, but I wouldn't feel confident in my ability to be like I can do the big concept of like, this is the thing that I would like to change, but I don't think I could get granular in the way that you were just suggesting.
Well, I'm not sure how granular we necessarily need to be. I mean, that's the hard part in a way. But you know, if we want to do something vague about ADUs, you know, the first thing we need to do is decide, okay, what within the bounds of the law do we actually want? And you know, it is in some ways easier to pick that apart when somebody has put a draft in front of you. But nobody can draft that before we make those decisions anyway. So we're going to be stuck thinking it through one way or another. I mean, what are we going to recommend to the city council in the end? It can't just be do something about ADUs. And, you know, it's not like I'm dying to take this on. I don't know what the alternatives are.
Well, I think it's easier to envision for me having working groups around like what are we looking for rather than working groups around let's rewrite this ordinance.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I just think, what are we looking for? Like, depending on how deep you feel like the detail needs to be, that's where I get a little like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. like, I don't know that I know enough to do that, but I think I know enough to be like pretty
Yeah.
good, but not like, you just said specific parcels in a specific zone to do the specific thing. And I was like, okay, that got super granular really fast. And I don't know that I can do that level of,
Yeah.
not
Well,
because
I
I
don't-
don't want to, but because
Yeah.
I don't have the knowledge
No.
base.
I picked on that one, I think, because for the most part, the work was already done years ago. It's just been sitting on a shelf.
Gotcha.
That's the
Understood.
SC
Okay.
district. And, all of these are a little bit different, like the section of the zoning code that nobody can use because it's completely internally inconsistent. That one, I think the only real alternative is for Jeff to either walk us through or hand us, or some selection of us, that section of the code, say, here, look at what doesn't make sense. We get 3 steps down this road and this thing intervenes.
Yes.
Could we please analyze everything that doesn't work and make a workflow where it does, or else get rid of this entire provision or figure out whether there's another way of getting to the same place, because developers want to use it and they can't. And that's a different kind of job from the one where, we want to take all of the old SC work and just put it in front of the council again as part of, can we fix what's wrong with the Ingleside district? And, since it has been a few years, look at what's changed. So part of the reason that I'm kind of floundering here is I think every one of these is slightly different in terms of what needs to be done to really make it work. And I admit to being completely lost myself when I even think about the signs issue. I don't know how you fix that. But what I was hoping for tonight was really just to open this conversation and see whether people have any thoughts about how to address it and what's key. Because while I agree with Kate that this is a huge lift for us, I don't see how any of it gets done if we don't do it. Unless we get really lucky and we can write a bunch of recommendations that are so powerful that the city council is willing to come up with some funding to make it work, or at least try to authorize a grant writer to look for some funding to hire somebody to make it work.
Is that something we can ask Jennifer to work on?
Jennifer Keat?
Yeah. I mean, she's constantly working on writing grants for OPED.
I think it's going to be a lot easier to get grant money for it once. I mean, unfortunately, it's like a cart horse kind of situation.
Yeah, I'm getting that.
It's going to be easier to get the money once the comprehensive plan has come out and said, Holyoke will suffer materially because you can't develop because these ordinances are bad. That's when we're going to get money.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and certainly there is the alternative of just writing a strong narrative explaining, okay, here is why BH is a problem. You can't develop because here are the setback rules. As part of our vision for the city's future, we recommend rewriting the zoning code as it applies to accomplish, or to reclassify everything in this region. This should be an industrial or a dense homeowner district. It is prevented from being so because we have these rules. I hate to lose the opportunity to actually do something as opposed to saying, this is why the city isn't working.
Agreed.
So we do have a list of areas that we think need to be addressed at this point. More may occur to people. I'm not sure that there's more we can accomplish tonight than saying, take this, think about it, think about how you might address any of these issues that is of particular importance to you, or it's been particularly bothering you. We can put it on the agenda to discuss again in 3 weeks.
Would it be possible to share out the list
I would think
of,
so.
okay, of the problem areas? Because I'd like to just take some time to read the zoning code for everything that is particular that we've talked about tonight, just so that I can educate myself a little bit better and like be a more active participant in the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I have not taken the written notes on this, but of course it'll be on tape, so.
Right, we can generate a list and then I'll also go through and I will add the section to which might relate to it.
Oh,
Just,
that would be
you
great.
know, so like parking, we'll do, you know, the various parking sections, sign 6.4, obviously, PUD 7.6. We'll include the sections of the zoning so that way it'll be easily referenceable.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so unless anybody else has anything to say about this, where is my agenda? That is all I had under project updates, but Jeff, do you have anything? Anyone have anything?
The only thing that I had was the report back from CPA about the tiny house neighborhood that somebody is trying to get some CPA funding for, and is a discussion point of
yeah.
whether it's eligible or not. Because they're trying to get funding considering it as affordable housing, but there's question about whether the state actually will consider it as affordable housing. So I will report back as I know more, but I just wanted to let everybody know that that came up as a conversation point in the last meeting.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like one for the state committee, but
Yes, which they did reach out to get some
yeah,
information
because
on.
it is not clear to me that simply being a tiny house means that it's affordable.
Correct. I think that therein lies the rub.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, I will be fascinated to hear about that. Anything else
will.
anybody's got? I'm surprised, but not unhappy. We have no minutes as far as I know. So we're on to meeting schedule.
Right, so at this point on November 12th, I've heard that we've got Light Shift Energy coming in for a Best at Bay State off of Babala. We've got the special permit for Burlington for signage for size and quantity. We've got the continuation of Agilitas plus their notice of decision discussion. And then we've also got the recommendation for cannabis beyond IG.
Right.
November 26th, we did not have a meeting. November 19th, we have a site plan review potentially coming for Open Square 84 units. We have a special permit for sign and fence at Duncan 209 South Street. We have a special permit for fence height construction fence 679 Main Street. And then we've got the continuation of 209 South Street for its site plan review and special permits that were originally scheduled for this evening. On December 10th, we have a continuation of the zone change for short-term rentals, planning board only. We do not have a meeting on December 24th.
Okay, so it sounds like just as we keep executive session on the agenda, just in case we need it, I would suggest that we probably want to keep the comprehensive plan on the schedule just in case we need to talk about it.
Right. We just, yeah, that was, that's just a continuing, yeah. That's,
Yeah, I mean, that's just,
right, always gonna be there.
yeah. So that's all I have. Anyone else have anything? I hear nothing. Would it be appropriate at this point to call for a motion to adjourn?
Goodness, I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call vote for Mimi,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Rosanna,
Yes, ma'am.
Lauren,
Yes.
and Grinder.
Yes.
Well, thank you all. I can't believe